Augustus Doricko, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, dude.
So, weather manipulation is on everybody's mind right now, and you make it rain. So, thought this would be a fascinating interview to be able to talk to somebody that knows actually what the hell's going on. Hopefully, so welcome.
Yeah.
Let's move into.
Let's open with cloud seeding, right? Cloud seeding was a technology invented in the United States by American scientists in 1946. It is super localized in its effect, both in space and time, meaning you can make it rain or snow more over an individual city, over 100 square miles at a time. Precipitation happens, 15 minutes to a couple hours after your intervention. And if you stop operating, right, if you stop cloud seeding, then you stop affecting the weather. It stops changing, right? So you can turn it off whenever you want. Also, because we were doing all of these experiments over the course of the last 80 years, we have data on its safety, right? We have data on the materials that we use. So people have typically used material called silver iodide to freeze the liquid in the cloud into these big snowflakes that eventually precipitate, melt into rain, or stay as snow. Silver iodide, its toxicity is like 10 times less than aspirin, for one. But more than that, more importantly than that, after decades of operations in Utah and Idaho and Colorado and California, because there were all these old programs, like I mentioned, they only added 8 parts per trillion more soil or more silver to the soil. And there's already 2 parts per million silver in American soil as it stands. So they added 1 million times less than what's naturally there. There's no adverse ecological consequences, agricultural consequences to human health. Like, it's way below the threshold where you'd start to see anything like that. So cloud seeding is just a way to make more water. It's super local in its effect. It's pretty well characterized, and we know that it doesn't have any adverse ecological consequences. On the other hand, there is geoengineering, particularly solar radiation modification. That is a pretty new technology. The way that it is proposed to work is dispersing particles in the upper atmosphere to reflect sunlight and cool the planet down. Totally unlike cloud seeding. In order for cloud seeding to work, you need a big fluffy cloud that's already there. Solar radiation modification, you just put it up at like 60,000 feet. It's an interesting technology, but it's one that is like almost entirely untested, and we should be way more scrutinous of and skeptical of before we deploy it at scale. Because we don't really know what's going to happen yet if we cool the planet down by a degree Celsius. We don't even know if we want to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the main geoengineering technology that exists. And then there's chemtrails or contrails, right? So that's the streaky things in the sky that people see behind airplanes. The first and most important thing to say is, if you see those long streaks in the sky, that's not cloud seeding. Whether it's contrails or chemtrails or anything else, it is not cloud seeding. For cloud seeding to work, you have to have a big fluffy cloud with natural water. Those long streaky things, they can't make rain. They don't turn into big puffier clouds that eventually make rain. That doesn't have to do with weather modification. There are such a thing as contrails, right? So the turbulence from planes and the vapor from the jet engines will freeze behind the plane, and that'll turn into condensation. What people have suggested to be chemtrails are like the nefarious addition of either some sort of neurotoxin or goodness knows what to those contrails to poison people. I have not yet seen enough compelling evidence to believe that that's happening.
Have you seen any evidence?
Here's what is the most compelling point of information that I'm not like totally over the line on. There are different additives in jet fuel for efficiency. There's different residues or impurities in jet fuel that can end up in condensation that probably wouldn't be healthy to eat hand over fist, but is probably way too diffuse to cause any sort of serious toxicity. So like really no. And I say that as a guy that like would want to know about it and talks to people about it all the time. Solar radiation modification, yes, people are doing that. There is a ton of evidence for that. Like we know lots of people that are doing that. But chemtrails themselves, like I guess a question for you would be, if that was happening, who would be doing it and why would they be doing it?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. I have no idea, but I do look out and I see it all, and I'm like, well, that probably is not good. But that's about the extent of it. I don't know why they would be doing it, but I don't know why they do a lot of things.
Well, okay, fair enough, right? One interesting thing about condensation trails, because we do know what those are, is they actually do have an effect on the weather to some extent. In that, like, you're essentially making this blanket, right, in the atmosphere around like 30,000 feet. And so if you create a condensation trail in the morning, then you are de facto blocking some of the sunlight from getting down to the earth and warming the planet up. So you can sort of locally cool things down if you create a condensation trail at night. And on the flip side, if you create condensation trails at the end of the day, like right before sunset, the blanket sort of acts as an insulator, so it keeps more of the infrared in, so it keeps things warmer locally beneath where they are, if you make a lot of them. So like maybe there's some reason to do that, but like I love the idea of getting microplastics out of the water and having, about how like birth control's in all water now?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
What?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's poisoning us that we should be like really concerned about right now. So
There's birth control in the water.
yeah. So right now, lots of women use hormonal birth control, right? And then we recycle a lot of that water. We don't actively filter out for the hormones that are in it. And so when that gets recycled, it gets put back in the water supply, and then dudes end up drinking it too. So one, Alex Jones was right about the atrazine and what it does to frogs. Two, there's a bunch of other stuff that's probably androgenizing us that's not good. So like, are there a lot of toxins in our environment? Yeah, totally. I would prefer that we focus like making America healthy again on getting rid of those things that we do know exist, rather than like speculating about the World Economic Forum like spraying mind control viruses over us or something.
If nothing nefarious is going on with the chem and contrails, why do you think all these states are making it illegal? I mean, I know Tennessee just did it, I think maybe a year or 2 years ago.
A year ago, yeah. Yeah. So Tennessee did it a year ago. Florida did it just this year. It's actually a class 2 felony in Florida now. So I would go to prison for 5 years if I conducted business in Tennessee, in Florida. I think the reason why they're doing it is, well, first of all, the Western states aren't doing this. They're not doing it because they're so desperate for water that they're seriously willing to hear out the case for cloud seeding, right? Like Montana proposed legislation to ban all weather modification and geoengineering. They still banned geoengineering, but they carved out cloud seeding because they know it'll be good for their cattle and for their farms and for their municipal water supplies and for their aquifers. Texas did the same thing. The eastern states, most people think of them as pretty wet, like you don't need a ton of water, but actually Florida sometimes doesn't have enough. Like 30,000 acres of Miami-Dade County burnt down in April from wildfire because there was a drought. The cattlemen and the orange orchards don't have enough water there either. Mm-hmm. So like sometimes actually even in the wetter states, they do need it, but they don't feel the pain as acutely of water scarcity as the West. So it is basically people rightfully not trusting the government and thinking that something fishy is going on. Nobody knowing what cloud seeding is or the difference between cloud seeding, chemtrails, and solar radiation modification, and thinking, holy smokes, any of this would be really consequential. We should just ban it so that nothing goes wrong, and sort of take like the brute force blunt approach to it and not reaping any of the rewards of what cloud seeding could offer. And then, RFK said that like chemtrails should be a crime for which people should be arrested. So he definitely catalyzed a lot of that too. And also like last thing, I think Rainmaker made enough of a splash in like 2023, 2024 to confirm to people that weather modification was real and it was measurable and we know it's happening. So we put enough information out there to tell people it was happening and probably actually scare them because we didn't give them enough context and reiterate the point enough. And so that's the origin of these bans, I think. And then Dubai flooding was a horrible look as well.
How many states have banned it?
So 31 states proposed legislation to ban
31 states.
Yeah. Me and my team have been to most of them. The only states that have banned it are Tennessee and Florida. And I mean, you think about it this way, right? Like, I was listening to another one of your podcasts with the retired two-star, the guy that runs the space manufacturing company.
Steve Quast.
Yeah, Steve Quast.
See, I was going to bring, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, no, please.
I was going to bring that up because in his interview, I don't remember the chemical or whatever it is that they're using to, he was talking about how Elon Musk wanted to use this thing where basically he put some type of a additive in a sponge-like substance and you run fans on it and it produces all this water. And that Elon wanted to use it to cool his rocket pads down there and got denied because Texas was like, we don't know how to tax you on this.
Yeah.
So then he had to use all of the regular water, which seemed like a huge misstep on Texas for not allowing him to do that and sucking up all that water in a dry state. But yeah, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly the point that I was bringing up too, right? Like, China and other countries around the world, the United States back in the 60s was like this. Like, they are investing in things and they are permitting things and they are regulating things smartly that, like, make more abundance, that make more energy, that make more water, that make everybody's lives better. The United States, for whatever reason, just like bans and regulates stuff out of existence that makes, one, all of our lives worse and us as a country less competitive. And so, you know, do I fault people for being scrutinous and skeptical of weather modification and wanting to know what's going on? Like, no, totally. This tech is going to be maybe the most consequential, if not like the second or third most consequential technology in the 21st century. I think the first is going to be, well, I mean, maybe there's four. It's really like AI, nuclear energy, rocketry, and weather modification. Those are the things that are going to make our descendants' lives look like fundamentally totally different from anything that any other human has experienced. But if we regulate it in a smart way and like permit it to happen in a way that benefits people, that's like a no-brainer. Having the most cost-effective way to produce more water when you want it, like, why would you pass up on that if you can prove that it's safe?
I think people, you know, it's new. You know, people don't like new. And then what are the implications of weather modification that we don't know about? And you know, like, how does it manipulate the rest of the weather by changing the ecosystem? So for example, I don't even know if this is true, but I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, very dry in a lot of those, in a lot of Afghanistan's, you know, it's a desert. In the north, it's not. But it was rumored that they had chopped so many trees down to keep themselves warm. There's no trees, you know, in the southern part anymore. And it actually changed their whole ecosystem, you know, and turned it into a desert because they had chopped all the damn trees down. And so, I mean, I think people are really concerned is, you know, what are the effects that we don't know about and we will not know until this comes to fruition and everybody's cloud seeding.
Yeah, and it's worth asking that question, right? But we have 80 years of data on its safety and on its efficacy. To reason by analogy, right? Like, California's Central Valley, it used to be a mix of desert and swamp. It was a wasteland at the beginning of the 1900s. And because we built new infrastructure, had new technologies for pumping water and desalinating water, we turned that into the most productive agricultural region in the United States. It feeds tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people around the world and produces like what, 40% of all of our fruit. We changed that ecosystem and it was way better for everybody else. So, should we regulate these things? Should we be cautious and like do it maybe with relatively slowly or with just caution, at least totally? But every day that goes by that people don't have enough water, you know, I view it to some extent as like guilt on me for not having made enough water to feed more people, to make everyone's lives better. Yeah, and that weighs on me a lot. So, should we be scrutinous? Yes. To your point as well, you know, you said like, well, what if you totally change the ecosystem? Could something bad happen? I was talking to, was it Will earlier in here? For the
Wyatt.
Wyatt. One thing to think about that is actually sort of a fun thought experiment is like greening the Sahara, right? Sahara Desert, huge wasteland. If you turn the Sahara Desert green, that actually would not be very good because the dust from the Sahara that goes over the ocean, over the Amazon, results in a lot of the cloud condensation and then precipitation. So if you turn all that green and the dust stops getting kicked up, you might actually reduce the precipitation over the Amazon. So like when Rainmaker gets to the scale in a decade or so of like actively terraforming the planet, making it more lush and green and symbiotic than it ever has been before, we're going to have questions that we have to answer about like what the consequences will be globally. But I think that humans are pretty good at engineering solutions and building new technology and building new systems to make the world better.
I mean, I guess the counter with that to that would be, I guess you would just cloud seed more over the Amazon, right?
Bingo. Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, is there any talk of how this would, you know, maybe intensify hurricanes or tornadoes or any other, you know, natural disasters that may not be natural disasters anymore?
Have you heard of Project Storm Fury?
No.
So, about the same time period as Popeye, the U.S. Air Force, in collaboration with the U.S. Weather Bureau, which eventually became like NOAA and the National Weather Service, they were flying into the Atlantic Ocean to seed hurricanes, to try to prevent the amount of damage or mitigate the amount of damage that they did before they broke against the eastern seaboard. And so the idea was, one, precipitate water out of the storm so that there's less flooding that occurs from it before it reaches land. And then two, if you freeze the liquid in the cloud, that releases a little bit of heat. Freezing is exothermic. And so if you seed the storm and it releases heat, you have the same amount of energy, but you expand the storm, like the heat advects it out. And so the wind speeds will be less on the exterior as well. So you get less damage from flooding, less damage from severe winds. We tried doing that. The problem then, though, was we didn't have anything in the way of satellites. We had no radar over the oceans. And so we couldn't even measure what the results were, really. So we gave it a go. Nobody really knows whether it was effective or not. But I think that the thing to consider is like, Rainmaker right now is just making more water for like farms, utilities, right? That's our bag. That is what people immediately need. We can do it at small scales. It is worthwhile. And people really want that. We operate all over the Western US. Someday, like, I don't think drought is the only thing that we should solve. If you could engineer away severe weather, flooding, if you could mitigate hurricanes, if you could mitigate hail, you'd have to do a lot of experiments to prove it was safe first. But why would we let the eastern seaboard of the United States keep getting blasted with hurricanes if we could build a solution for it?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And then, going back, to what if this does intensify hurricanes or, take the rain away from the Amazon and create a drought. I mean, once it's happened, I I guess what I'm saying is how many people would pay the price, by making the Sahara green, takes the dust down, eliminates the rain in the Amazon. Then we got to figure something out immediately because it's going to affect all those people.
No, we wouldn't, because it would take decades to make the Sahara green. You'd have to do that step by step, piece by piece. It'd be a very slow process, and you with cloud seeding, you could turn it off whenever you want. So in that long process of trying to do large scale terraforming, you would be able to stop at any point if you didn't like what was happening from producing more water in one place versus the other. So I don't think we would have to have a solution at the drop of a hat. And also on the flip, even if we did, and I think that we don't, right? Because it would take so long to deploy this tech to cause these things. There is suffering now. There's $140 billion in damage done by hurricanes every year in the U.S. There's hundreds of billions of dollars in crop failures every year in the U.S. from lack of water. So it's not that like this tech is without risk, but like there is a horrible problem right now because there isn't enough water and because we have severe weather, and like I guess in principle, right? Like
you're saying you're concentrating on the need.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, what could happen. You want to
Well, I think
want to fill the immediate need.
I think about both, right? Because I don't think that the unknown unknowns are that great. Like I said, we have 80 years of data on this stuff. Like we know pretty well how it works, and we haven't seen any of this sort of adverse consequence. I mean, at the very least, right? We have less and less water every year in the American West than we did before. So like, maybe we only get this far, but let's just get back to baseline, right? Like, let's just get back to the amount of water that we had 40 years ago, because we knew that it was safe and stable then. So like, let's make sure that Lake Powell is full. Let's make sure that the Great Salt Lake isn't evaporating. Let's make sure that Phoenix and Tucson and Salt Lake City and Las Vegas and Dallas and Denver and all the cities in the Central Valley and California writ large have enough water, that the same amount of water that they used to even. Let's start with that. Because that's going to take a lot of my time for the next 5 years or so. And then after that, we can get into the more pie in the sky stuff. But for now, more water on the ground so that we get back to baseline is the number one priority.
Roger that. Let's take a quick break.
Cool.
When we come back, we'll talk about how this all works.